put on this computer. Let's see. Okay. So, okay, let's see. We've got students joining. I've made an announcement. Apparently, some of you didn't get it. Who else didn't get it? Let's see. Show of hands. Let me go ahead and see gallery. People didn't get it. Okay. Yeah, the email, it should have gone via email to you. So, because when I make an announcement on Canvas, I get it bumped to email, which is the way it works by default. Yeah, I sent one out last night at 11 o'clock, and then I sent out another one 5 minutes ago. Should have sent one out earlier, but I meant to, but totally forgot because I'm awesome like that. So, okay, but it's useful for you to be here, to be by a computer anyway, because today we are going to be talking about files. Okay. Now, the reason I want to mention this is that this is the lecture where it is very important that you pay attention to me if we want to, for this to go smoothly. Okay. Because most of the errors that you will experience here are as a result of either improper organization or just not listening to me. So for today, anything you do, any Python file you create, okay, make sure you know where it is. That is very important. You got to know where it is on your computer, because that file, that Python file that you write, that Python program has to be in the same folder as whatever file we're going to try reading today. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and start by just kind of talking about the two basic file types that exist. All right. Which are, let's go and get Dracula. All right. Which are binary files and text files. Normally start about how file reading in Python is how I fell in love with it, but we'll get into that in a second. Right now, I want to just talk about, from my experience last semester, just downloading the file. Okay. And now if you're working on Mac, this will be slightly different. If you're working on a Linux machine, then what I'm about to say is probably redundant because you probably already know. Okay. So first off, I'm going to Project Gutenberg, which is www.gutenberg.org. I will drop a link in the Zoom chat for you all, but I recommend going here for any files that you want to try to get to test downloading. Project Gutenberg is a free book website. They have ebooks of basically anything out of US copyright. Anything that's not been, anything where the author's been dead for a while, and as well as things that are just not in copyright because they are governmental, like the Declaration of Independence. All right. So what I've done is I've just went ahead and I have searched for Dracula by Bram Stoker. Okay. Mainly because it's a decently sized file. It's not too big, not too small. And if we click on that book, it will come up to us and say, hey, you have a bunch of ways to download this file. You can click on reading this book online. That's not what we're going to want to do eventually, but you'll see that it's got the contents of the book right over there. And then you have EPUB and Kindle, which is a .mobi file and a .epub file. I'm going to download the EPUB file without any images just to kind of give you an idea. That's not the file we're going to need though. Okay. It's not the file we're going to need. I'm going to save it on my desktop. Okay. So by default for this exercise, I'm just going to be saving stuff on my default desktop. So when I share, it's going to be easy for you to see. But that's not necessarily where the file we want to deal with today is this one. Now, if you click on this file, you're going to get this, which is a text file. And so the way we download this file is you're either going to want to right click on this, save link as, and notice that the file type, it says save as type text. Actually, I don't know if you can see the pop-up window for my download dialog. Share the entire screen. Save as text file, right? Might be hard to read, but that's what it says. I'm going to change the name to Dracula. Okay. And on my desktop, it should appear. And so now I have a Dracula. Okay, give me a second. I'm going to go into my Windows File Manager. Okay, and this is important on Windows. So I opened up my file browser. I'm going to go onto View. And under Show, I'm going to click File Name Extensions. That just makes it easy for us to see the extensions for the file names. Might be hard to see, but now I've got Dracula.txt and I've got the file extensions. Okay, now why am I going into this? Well, on your computer, there's basically two types of files: text files and binary files. Binary files are files for programs to open up, whereas text files are programs for humans to read. But Professor Rosen, you say, an EPUB file is an ebook file, right? I should be able to read it, but it's not in text. If I try opening this up in a text editor like Visual Studio Code, which I'll do right now, and this is why I downloaded it, you'll see that if I try to open up the EPUB file, I get a ton of gibberish, right? This is because it's just a bunch of ones and zeros and other commands with some stuff that we can read. But that's meant for the EPUB reader program to read, and then for it to turn it into text because it's all compressed and efficient like that, and it's got formatting stored, right? Makes sense? It's not meant for us to read. It's meant for the program to take in so that it can display something for me. Whereas a text file is the other type of file, and that's the type of file we're going to be working with. And we work with the majority of the time. You can see that it's an entire file on its own. Everybody following me so far? So we'll want to download this a text file. Okay. So again, what you'll want to do is go to Dracula and either right click, save link as, and you'll want to make sure it's a text file, or open it up. And let's see, if I do save page as, on that page, it will say this, specifically this page. Or if I push Control S on a Windows or Command S on a Mac on this page, it will save this. And then you just select where you want to save it. Okay. So now why is this important? Because a lot of times when we have programs that generate a lot of data, it's important for us to to have it in a way that we can read or store it. So a lot of times we like to read and write data. Okay. So I've got idle started up. Okay, everybody can see just fine. Do I need to make the font size bigger? I'm going to create a new file, a new Python script. And here's wherever you see. So here's the thing. I'm going to go ahead and save this so I don't mess this part up. And this is the part that you should follow along. I'm going to save it wherever I saved my book file, Dracula in my case, right? I'm going to save it on my desktop. That just so happens to be where I put it. Okay. Because this program will not work unless it's in the same file. Sorry, in the same folder. Okay. And I'm going to call this file reading example. You could call it whatever, but I called it file reading example. And notice that I've now got 3 files over here. I've got my or I've got the files I care about. I've got Dracula, and I've got the file reading example file. And they're both in the same folder. They're both on my desktop. So now, right, this is important. Where are you having trouble saving it? Because either you want to, if you're on a Mac, it might be a bit slightly different, but you should be able to save it either by right-clicking there. You'll need to select the folder there. Are you on a Mac? Okay, on a Mac, you'll most likely need to say I think you might have to hit a button. All right. So where did I go to get the text file? I went to Gutenberg.org, clicked on it, and I just grabbed a book. I personally went for Dracula by just typing Dracula. No, you do not need the EPUB file. That was just an example. The file you need is this plain text file over here. Okay. So again, with the Mac, I think in the dialog box, there's a button to press maybe to expand to where you want to save it as, or what folder you want to save it as. Because by default, I think the text box for Mac is small. If you can't do this on your iPad, then you should definitely do it at home when you can, just for practice. Because for the homework that we're going to do, okay, for the homework that for the 7th homework, the hurricane assignment homework, if you demo, I have it in big bold letters. If you demo it to me, and there's a file not found exception, like you try to run it and it doesn't work because it can't find the file, that is an automatic failure on that assignment. No appeal, no redos, because it says to me that because I had issues with students who were just essentially copying and pasting that from or getting the answer from other students, but obviously couldn't set it up themselves because they got the code, but you have to have the file structure right, which isn't that hard if you actually did it yourself. So it's important to understand that you got to have those here. Yeah, to prevent the file not found, they have to be in the same location, or they have to be in this, or you have to have the idea of where they are. And we're going to get into that. Okay, so now that we've got it, here's what I'm going to, so here is kind of the moment I fell in love with Python personally, because it made it very easy to do this. And I'm just going to go ahead and, wait, no, I'm working in idle, so I'm not going to share my entire screen. Or I'm not going to just share idle. So, because in Java, it's a pain it's a real pain to open files, and to read files in C, it's also just very slow and tedious and just not fun. A Python, it's easy. To open up a file, I say open, and then I say, and then you'll notice there's a bunch of options over here. I'm going to say this, okay, if I'm, give me 1 second. I'm just trying to remember if this was an issue with Dracula. I think it was, but whatever. I remember how to deal with that. Dracula.txt. So that's it to open up the file. Now, if I run it, it doesn't really do anything. Gutenberg, Project Gutenberg. Like I said, this one's very important that you follow along. Go to www.gutenberg.org, and I just simply.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Does it matter which book we download?
No, it does not.
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and actually download let me see. Bill of Rights. United States Bill of Rights. I'll grab that one too, just because I think I'll be able to read that, because that's a much smaller file. Much smaller file. I didn't download it correctly. Bill dot, or I didn't give it the right name. Let me give it the right name. Bill dot txt. There we go. Is there any way to know it didn't work? So first off, if I, so first off, if I run this and it works, boom, that means it was able to find it. Similarly with the Bill of Rights file. Are you sure they're in the same problem or same folder? You got to include the extension as well. All right. So, Christopher, are you willing to share your screen? Or Dylan? All right, go ahead. Share your screen, because if one person's having, if multiple people are having it, I need to keep people along. This is why it's good to be on Zoom for this one. Okay. So someone go ahead and share your screen if you're having an issue. So I can't see that. You need to go ahead and share your screen. You shared your window. I need you to share the entire screen. You say, Adam, you save it by hitting, by either right clicking on the link or by clicking on the file and then downloading that page.
So do we copy the entire path?
No,
or
you shouldn't need
just
to.
the file name?
Just should be the entire, just the file name.
Okay, got it.
All right. So, all right, you are in practice. So Python Labs practice. So open it up. Practice. Making file. Nope, not in the same place. That's not the file you opened. So over here, this is, so over here, let's see. Don't move. That tells you exactly where it is. Python Labs practice making file. You are not in the practice folder. You are in the Dracula file folder. So you have two files of the same name. You'll need to close that file. Mm-hmm. All right. So like I said, so now run it. There you go. So like I said, they have to be in the same place. A lot of times, if it's not working, it's because your computer is doing exactly what you tell it. All right. So now that we've got this, let me go ahead and talk about this. Again, to download the books, just go to Gutenberg.org, type in the name of a book and download it. I'm going to grab Dracula because it has a weird thing going. It has a weird thing, if I remember. But that will be fine for later. Okay. So anyway, I went to Gutenberg.org and you download it by either right-clicking. Yep. Right-clicking on this, hitting save as, or clicking on this and downloading it by right-clicking or hitting Control S on this page or hitting Command S if you're on a Mac. Like I said, at the beginning of this lecture, it is very important that you pay attention in this lecture because every step requires you getting this previous step correct. Okay. So now that we've got this, let me explain what's going on here. That was a question in the chat. What in the world is this R? So first we've got the file name. I've got two files on my desktop, Dracula and the Bill of Rights. Okay. The first thing in Open is the name of the file that you want to grab. If it's in the same folder, it's super easy to find. It doesn't have to be in the same folder, but for all intents and purposes, for this first exposure, you want it to be in the same folder, and it has to be in the same folder for it to work. The name of the file is both a name of the file, which is, I know that seems pretty obvious, but then you have a dot and then you have the extension. That extension is actually also part of the name. The purpose of an extension is twofold. First off, it tells you, the user, what kind of file it is and how it's going to behave. The second is that it tells the computer what program to try opening it with. So for instance, by default, it wants to open up in Notepad on my computer. Okay. Now, the second argument over here is how I'm opening this file. R is for read. There are three options: read, write, and append. R, W, and A. For this one, now writing or appending is destructive, so we're not going to work with that one today. We're not quite yet. Destructive in the sense that you can overwrite a file. So let's not right now. But this means that I want to read this file. And then how do I read it? Well, it's fairly simple. Text is equal to file dot read. Print text. And you'll notice that in Python, it says over here, squeeze text. It's because it's a lot of output. And you'll see that I've got the file over here. Let's go down to Amendment 1, right? Amendment 2, Amendment 3, Amendment 4, Amendment 5. Right, so we see that it's printed out the same that's printed out. Now, again, how did I do that? I say, open up what file name I want. Then and what is file? I'm going to go ahead and before I print out the text, I'm going to go ahead and print out what in the world is file. When I print it out, it says it is a text IO wrapper. What this is just, it's a fancy object. It's a tool for us to manipulate and work with the file. IO wrapper. Well, what is IO? IO stands for input output. So text input output wrapper. It's just a way for us to work with the file because we might want to work with it in different ways. And one of the most basic ways is by reading. Yes.
So I tried to do the text equals file.read print text with the Dracula still.
Mm-hmm. And you got an error.
I'm getting a traceback error. Yeah.
I will address that in a second.
Okay.
That's why I downloaded Bill, because I remembered something about Dracula.
Oh, okay. You set me up.
Yes, I did. I remembered something about Dracula, which is that not all text files are equal. But otherwise, if that didn't work for you, Peter, did you get, when you say didn't print, do you mean that you didn't get anything, or you mean you didn't get, you got to trace back to? Right. That's gonna happen for me as well for Dracula. That's about, as I was downloading it, I remembered what happened last semester. Boom. So first off, let's go ahead and check what's going on here. It says, hey, Unicode decode error. Car map codec can't decode this position. character maps to undefined. In other words, it's trying to read a character, but the character is in the wrong format. There's different formats for texts. Most of the time when it's in UTF-8, it's okay. But for Dracula, I think we need to, what I need to do is, I remember encoding. I'm going to just, give me a second. I'm just trying to work off memory. So this will either work phenomenally or fail very quick or fail very obviously. Okay. It worked. Okay. So if you're having trouble with printing out the Dracula, you want to add this line to tell, because notice that it says it's a plain text UTF-8. What the heck is UTF-8? Is the variable with character encoding used for electronic communication. It is derived from Unicode. And basically what it does is that it's used for dealing with well, it's the way that most of UTF-8 is dominant for the World Wide Web for 98% of all web pages and 100% of all languages. Basically, in the beginning, right, there was Ascii. Ascii, when used 7 bits to encode characters. These were the characters that were encoded. Eventually, so here's the characters that Ascii comes up with. So in other words, it says, hey, if you get this sequence of bits from a typewriter, this is what that sequence of bits means. Null, start of header, start of text. So various command things, bell for old computers where you get a beep, hitting the backspace key, that's certain bit sequence. And then we've got all these, we've got all of our punctuation marks, we've got all of our numbers, common mathematical symbols, and then we've got our letters. Okay, and that's all we needed to get started with programming. But what's the issue? What's the issue with ASCII? Give you a hint.
Languages?
Yes, other languages. Because the thought was, okay, we've got 7 bits here. And things go in bytes, which are 8 bits. So that's 128 more characters. If people need 128 more characters, they, for glyphs in their languages like German, you need your umlaut, then you can use those characters. But there's more characters than that. You have in Japanese, I think there's 2,000 officially approved kanji. So that just doesn't work. So we have one standard for encoding basically all the characters. And UTF-8 is the most well-known implementation of that. So here we go. So by telling it it's a UTF-8 file, that makes Python behave correctly. So what is your operation not permitted error? That is very interesting. Are you getting that? What line are you getting the operation not permitted error on? And I knew it was a UTF-8 because the website I downloaded it from said it was a UTF-8 error. You're not, most of the files you work with will almost never have that problem. Again, these kind of problems only will come up when you're dealing with non-ASCII characters, which is actually going to be fairly rarely in these cases. All right. So, but again, if I switch back over to the bill file, it works just fine regardless. So what do you mean that you don't see it popping up? That's like we've got the file, we read the file, and then you print it out. And notice that what happens over here is that I have a box that says squeeze text. Now, the reason that is because printing is an expensive operation, and this makes it very large. You do not need to submit anything for today. Today is just simply to show off the basics of file reading and how to get file reading working on your computer. Okay. So for right now, what I'm going to work with is you get an operation not permitted for your file. That is interesting. All right. So Adam, would you be willing to share your screen? All right. I'm just curious about this, and then any other errors will wait until the end of class because I want to go ahead and just show the various ways we can read a file after this. Okay. So you've got that. So Dracula, so go ahead and run it. Ah, yeah. Try clicking in that empty space. Here. I don't know, maybe we can't see it because of the it's very weird. Oh, hold on. Okay. Because what it looks like you're reading is the own file is itself. Except that it looks like you're reading your it's itself, except that it's a text file, not py. Are you sure they're in the right folder and you're reading the right thing?
Yeah, I put them both in my in one folder, but it's like
Try
it's not
renaming
really-
Dracula into something else. The Dracula.py file into something else, or Dracula.txt into something else, because you named them both the same thing, and it's just printing out. It looks like it's right. It's printing out its own source code essentially.
Oh, okay.
So,
All right, yeah, I'll try to rename it and see what
Mhm.
happens.
Okay. So let me go ahead and show the other ways we can read through files, by the way. Okay. And again, I'll be using the Bill of Rights right over here because I remembered, hey, that exists and that's a short file. Okay. So the first way you can read it is by just simply doing file.read. Okay. And storing that as a text file. Okay. Sorry, and storing that as a string. File.read basically stores the entire thing as a giant string. There's also another way to do it. The second way to do it is, oh yeah, of course. Yeah, so first way to do it, right? File.read, it just prints out the file. Boom. And what it does, file.read, it takes this file, stores it as a string and stores that string in text. Another thing to do is that we can do read lines. Now, I stored that and I still stored it in text, but text is no longer a string. Let's take a look at it. It's now a list. And we know it's a list because of that bracket that starts it. This is a list. Each line is its own item in the list. So what I could do is I could say for line in text, print line. Okay, and you'll notice though that now when I print it out like that, that I have an empty line here. Why is this? Why do I have a base? Why have it basically everything double width? The answer is because if you notice, each line that we stored in here has a new line on the end. So what happens is that I print out all the text, which includes the new line. And then when I finish a print operation, it includes the new line. So one way to get rid of that is to do line dot strip, which gets rid of, well, line dot strip won't do anything if I don't store the result of it. Let's see, actually, does it do anything? Line dot strip. And yeah. And what strip does is that it removes any preceding or trailing white space. Another way to do that is to just simply say, hey, the print statement, let's not end it by default. We end it with a new line. And instead of ending it with a new line, let's just say end it with nothing. Okay. Now, the third way to do it, and this is what made me fall in love with Python. So, third way to do it is, so we had text is equal to file dot read. That made it a string. A list of lines. But this is what, when I was trying to read a big giant text and convert it into a database file, a SQL file, basic using Python, I didn't know how to read a file. So I was trying to learn. So in other words, how do I, and I was like, oh gosh, how do I read a file? Sorry, I open up a file like this, but how in the world do I read it? And I just tried, because again, Python's all about the least surprise. And you could just read a file like this, just launching straight into a for loop. And again, the same thing happens. I've got the double space. So I would have to say, hey, a line is equal to line dot strip to get rid of the beginning and trailing white space. And do it like that. Now I can do things like I can count how many. Now that I've got, I know how to read a file, I can do things like do some compound operations, like how many characters are on this file. How do I figure out how many characters are in this file? Fairly straightforward. I can just simply read the file in the string. Assuming I can type, and then print out that there's 10,836 characters in this. If I wanted to know how many lines were in it, similarly, I could just change this to read lines, and that will tell me how how many lines they've put in this, which is 263. Now, so that is basically how you read files. Now, why is this useful? Because a lot of data we might be operating with is either in a file or in a text file or .csv file. For instance, let's go ahead and take a look at our Canvas page for upcoming homework. Homework that will be upcoming and due after the winter break. I should mention, not the winter break, the spring break. The hurricane tracker is where we are going to put everything together. And as I mentioned earlier, it is essential all work that is done in irma.py, and the file structure present by the stip file is maintained so that UrbanPy can find the other files. If you do not know what this means, ask your TA, your professor, or your classmates. Demoing this assignment and getting an error due to misplaced file will result in an instant 0 with no appeal, as this means you did not write your own code or did not learn how the files worked. So the hurricane tracker is going to put everything that we've done this semester together. The output for your hurricane tracker file looks like this. Where it traces the track of a stored hurricane. It traces the path of a hurricane that has been stored in its memory. Now this looks intimidating, but take a guess as how we do the graphics.
Open a file.
Well, yes, but like, what is driving the graphics? How are we drawing things?
Yeah, I was going to say turtle.
Turtle.
Total.
We're using Turtle to draw the graphics. I'll go ahead and download this starter file. And it's a zip file. I'm going to download it where I'm going to work on it. I should probably do that in documents or something, or a folder I have set up for my programming. Probably, I like to keep my desktop clear. So I'm going to go ahead, and if I was a student, I might have a folder like programming projects, assuming I wasn't using Git, which I should, and I'll teach you how to use that. So now I'm going to open it up. I'm going to extract all. And there we go. See it extracted. I don't need the zip file anymore. If I need to restart my program, I'll get it. I'll open it up. I'll re-download it. But anyway, here we go. Oh, starter files. It's got done one of those weird things. I'm just going to go and boop. Here we go. So there we go. In here, you'll have three files. Sorry, you'll have 3 files, 2 of which are folders. Folders are actually files. And again, you may not be done with the current homework, and that's okay. But I'm just trying to show you. I'm going to open this up in actually, I'll go ahead and open it up in idle, just so that it's documents, programming project, start file, Irma. Right? So you already get a lot of stuff. Everything you do goes in here, though. And it already does a lot for you. You might have noticed that it comes up and goes blank. That's okay. It will, let me just see, t.done. I think this will help keep it. Is it t.done? Okay, there we go. So if you're working in Visual Studio Code, by the way, if it goes away, for anybody working on this assignment, actually, I highly recommend putting turtle.code. This is what happens. I was talking about VS Code, and so I typed code. Turtle.done over here. And this says, keep the window open even though the Turtle's program is done. We're done. Please keep it open. Don't just close it up. And you'll see that it automatically creates this world map for you. So that's what you'll be working with. And you'll see that your hurricane's actually that it also has the hurricane. It turned your turtle into a hurricane and moved it into the appropriate start position. So how in the world do you know where to move it? Well, over here we have a data file. And you'll see that, and you'll want to read that data file. But notice that we've got a bunch of files, and these are not, they are not .txt files. These are .csv files. What the heck's a .csv file? Now, I don't have Excel on my computer right now, but if I did, I would double click it and it would open in Excel. But let's go ahead and open one up. It will open up in VS Code just plenty easy. Irma.csv. And this is what a CSV file looks like. CSV stands for comma separated values, meaning it's a table, like an Excel table, except that it's just a text file. And how do you know what's in each cell? The commas. So the first number is the first item is the date, the time, the latitude, the longitude, the wind, and the pressure. And so you read this file and you know where to go. But Professor Rosen, they're not in the same folder. Well, that's okay. Because so let me show you how to get around that, because a lot of times we don't deal with files in the same folder. A lot of times we deal with, let's see. We deal with, let's see, we deal with files in a different folder. So what I'm going to do is put new folder, text files. I'm just going to name it text files, all one word. That is the folder. I'm going to go ahead and I'll drop Dracula and Bill in there. Okay. And now let's go back to my file reading example. Desktop file reading example. Right. If I try to read the Bill of Rights again, I'm going to get a no such file directory error. Okay. A no such file error or directory error. Because it says I can't find where Bill is there. And that's right. There is nothing on my desktop called Bill. Make sense? What it is, it's inside this folder over here. So to find that again, the way I deal with that, since it's in this folder, is I say the folder it's in, data files, sorry, not data files, text files, plural. Text files / so it says go to the text files folder, open it up, and inside is a look at the Bill file. This is called a path. Okay, this is called a path, and you can see that it worked. There, it printed out the number of lines in it. Now there's two types of paths. This is what's called a relative path, and the way relative path works is that it starts from where I am. In other words, the file that I'm currently in, right? The folder I'm currently in, it starts from here and then figures out its directions from there. So it says, starting from where this file is, which is on my desktop, go to text files / bill / txt. This is the preferred way to do things, because that way you can package everything up and send it to somebody else, and then they can unzip it on their end and read everything. It's much preferable over what's called the absolute path, which is that everything has a path on your computer. In my case, because I'm on a non-Unix system, I work with drives, C drive, D drive, bunch of drives on my computer. All right. So here I'm going to, and if I go, and you can find this out on Mac as well, if you just go to your properties for this, you'll see under locations, if you right click it and go to properties, there's a similar feature on Mac that it's got, says location is C:/user/pro/desktop/text files. This is what's called an absolute path. Notice, by the way, that the though that if I do this on Windows, I get a bit of an issue. Let's see. And the reason is because I'm using because Python doesn't like these slashes. If remember, those are escape sequences. So if I want an actual slash, I have to do 2 slashes. So there it found the file. It looked in C drive, the user's folder, the username, that user's desktop, on the text file folder on that desktop in there. So you can see why this wouldn't work on anybody else's computer, because your C drive is going to be different and you're going to have a different username. And God help you if you're on a Mac. Ah, excellent. Why did I have to use 2 slashes for the absolute path and not the relative path? Because for the relative path, I didn't use backslashes. I used the right slashes, the forwards, the correct slash, the forward slash. Interestingly, though, let's see if Python's smart enough, though. Python, I believe, is smart enough to deal with that. Windows, for its paths, uses backslashes as opposed to the sane forward slashes. I say this, I love you, Windows, but this is the correct way to do slashes. Okay. If the text file and the program are in the same location or folder, you don't have to do this, because essentially if they're in the same folder, it's just going to go, aha. Just look at Bill. Bill, we're going to be here. Look for bill.txt in this folder. Sorry, in the folder I am currently in. What if the file was in the folder and the text file was on the desktop? Ah, what if the situation was reversed? Excellent question. And now we're getting into kind of Unix commands and stuff. So what if this was here and this was there? Because it's open in Python. Got it. Okay, delete that, move that. All right, what if the positions were reversed? What if the positions were reversed? The positions were reversed. So first off, dot means this folder. A dot by itself means this folder. And dot dot is the shortcut for the folder above me. So you can just do that to find it. So this means go to my parents folder and find bill.txt in there. In general, you probably don't want to do that because the more important things are in the subfolders, whereas like everything that programs depend on should be in subfolders, not in the folders above it, which is where it's being stored. You don't, so generally you want to avoid that. You like stuff having like program and resources. And we saw that over here. Program, resources. In general, though, you generally just want the full file in the same folder. It helps. But for our program, for our homework, they're already put in here. So, right, in general, you want to trace the path of Hurricane Irma, but we've got also the paths and data for other hurricanes as well. Okay. So yeah, that was a lot of talking for just for a simple command, but there's just a lot of pitfalls that can happen as a result. So couple common pitfalls. First off, you didn't download the correct kind of file. You might have accidentally downloaded an HTML file or something. So that's why your output's weird. Second type of thing, your file isn't where you think it is. Either your Python file isn't where you think it is, or your program isn't where you, or your either your Python file isn't where you think it is, or the file you're trying to read isn't where you think it is. For the Python file, if you're working in idle, in any IDE, in fact, you can find out very quickly where you are. Okay. By just simply going, let's see. So open, again, desktop. In the title bar, you can just read the top of the file and it will say where it is, the top of the title bar, and it'll say where it is. Same with a Mac. For Macs and other Unix-based system, by the way, it's going to look something like this, like slash, I think it's like /users on Mac /home, or sorry, user /. Yes, where I'm at, the current directory that the program is in is the working directory.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
So relative, when would you, like, why would you ever use absolute path if you can use relative? Shorter.
When you plumb can't just get it to work for some reason.
Okay, so for the relative path, like where does the path end, if you know what I mean?
It ends when it can find a file. It ends at this string.
Yeah, I know, like, sorry, where does it start? Like,
it starts in your current working directory where you currently are, where you are currently running the program. So in this case, it starts in the desktop because the file I'm running is on the desktop.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yes.
If I'm running, for Irma, it's going to be inside that starter files folder. If I run this program, this is where the current working directory is, and that's where the relative path starts.
Oh, okay. So whatever folder it's in, pretty much.
Yep, exactly. Your
But
desktop.
in your case, yours is on the desktop, so it would be the desktop.
Yes, your desktop is a folder. Watch. So if I go to this PC, users, and this is true for Mac as well, right? If you're in your home folder, it looks something like this. Your desktop is a folder.
Okay.
Okay. So everything on a computer is a file. Some files are folders, and folders hold other files. It's a concept that you don't really ever have to think about until you have to worry about working with files.
And my other thing was, I didn't exactly think I heard you when you said about the / and the \, which one to use?
You want to use / because / are the right way to do things. But Windows, when it does paths, will uses \ for everything. So for instance, let me copy paste this path. Okay, give me 1 second. Copy. This is the way Windows does stuff.
Okay.
If you want to do that, you have to escape those things. But by default, the way to do things in in a Unix-based environment like a Mac or Linux,
I should just change them to
you can just change them as well.
Okay.
And in general, you won't need to use that if you're using relative, because it will just use slashes regardless. Just use /. All right. Any other general questions? Because the idea here is now in the last, however long it needs to be, I will be going through and assisting anybody who is having trouble. Okay. So tomorrow we'll start working on one of the more common things I like to do on the final exam, which is reading a file and then doing stuff from the data from the file and printing out a result. So we might do either Mad Libs or we might, yeah, Mad Libs sounds fun, or something else like that. We'll see. All right. So otherwise, class is dismissed. If you need my help, because you were having trouble getting the files working, please stay behind and let me know. We should be back in person on Thursday. Yes, this recording will be posted as soon as it renders. Okay, let me stop sharing and stop recording.